This week on Jerusalem Dateline, the world faces a deadly threat from ISIS. This expert on Islam says the U.S. should turn to its Christian values to fight the good fight. Plus, thanks to ISIS, a once thriving city is now a desolate ghost town. Our exclusive visit to Sinjar in northern Iraq. And a discovery in Jerusalem reveals something shocking about women in ancient Jerusalem. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell, coming to you this week from Capitol Hill in the nation's capital. It's appropriate because the world is looking to the U.S. to lead in the battle against radical Islam. One Islamic expert says America's military might, though, won't be enough to win unless it has the values and the will to fight. And he's offering some unique advice to the U.S. If America and Europe want victory over radical Islam, they need to embrace their Christian roots, according to Harold Rode, religious Jew and expert on Islam.
The Christian world is a very powerful world if it chooses to be. It has enormous abilities. I want you Christians to believe in your values. Historically, when Muslims see weakness, they pounce. America, the leader of the West, is showing weakness.
Rode lived and studied in universities in the Islamic world for years. He advised the U.S. Defense Department on Islamic affairs for nearly 3 decades. He says the view of peace takes on totally different meanings between Muslims and the West.
Peace in the West is let bygones be bygones. Let's say you and I had terrible problems in the past. We sit down, you give a little, I give a little, we shake hands. We don't forget what happened, but we work together towards our new goal. We put the past behind us.
As for Islam,
revenge is the basis of everything. If you don't avenge something, you lose personal honor. You are shamed. So there's never peace. You do not let bygones be bygones.
And what the West calls terrorism, Muslims see as classic Islamic warfare.
Islamic warfare comes basically from the time of the Quran. They were tribes fighting tribes out in the desert. You raid the other side. You take its property, you take its women, you take its children. Your goal is to make the other side afraid. You raid and withdraw. Eventually, by making the other side afraid, they withdraw and you take their territory. That's what terrorism is.
But Rohl told CBN News America can fight it and win.
America and Europe has unbelievable, awesome power, but we don't seem to have the stomach now to use it. Power without the will to use it is irrelevant.
One recent example came when Iran captured American sailors after accusing them of crossing into its territorial waters.
And America did nothing. Excuse me, when Iran gave them up and got its propaganda value from them, Secretary of State Kerry, oh, thank you. See? Being nice helps. This was shameful.
If Washington would stand tough, he said, many Muslims would cheer.
You would be surprised the amount of Muslims would say, thank God. Would they say it publicly? Not in the beginning, because they'd be afraid that they'd be killed by fellow Muslims.
According to Rode, that's where America needs to return to its roots.
But I want Christians to believe in Jesus. I want them to observe Christian values. With that, America is safe. Europe is safe. Israel is safe. The world will be safe.
Right now, the focus of the battle against radical Islam is the Islamic State, the Caliphate in Syria and northern Iraq. This week, the world got more evidence of how the jihadi army is destroying Christian culture in the Middle East. Reporters made the trip to the Syrian town of Malula, where historic monasteries and churches were destroyed under months of ISIS rule.
Look, they came even here. Look what they have done to our church. All smashed, burned. They have stolen valuable icons and have burned those which have no value. Even the bowl of holy water and clothes of priests were burned. Even the stones were broken.
The Russian government recently organized a trip for international journalists to visit the area. Residents recalled how they felt when the Syrian army reclaimed their city from the terrorists. The jihadis had also abducted the local nuns, who were later freed for ransom. The rebels still hold power in the capital's eastern suburbs. While ISIS is being driven out of parts of northern Iraq, the devastation left behind is unbelievable. CBN's Chuck Holton recently spent a week on the ground there, giving us a close-up picture of the situation. In the city of Sinjar, Kurdish forces drove ISIS out, but not before the terrorists destroyed what was once a city of 500,000.
On my last trip to Iraq in November 2015, the Kurdish Peshmerga forces were massing to retake the city of Sinjar, which had been captured by ISIS in August 2014. We watched as U.S. aircraft pounded the city in advance of the operation, and when the Peshmerga entered the town on November 13th, the Islamic State had already retreated, and the Kurds faced very little resistance. But the damage had been done. ISIS completely razed the city, carrying away anything of value and destroying almost everything that was left. CBN was given rare access to explore this ruined landscape. What we saw was absolutely chilling. Many homes have been reduced to rubble. Those still standing look like this. What was once a city of 500,000 now sits silent and empty. This is one of many tunnels that were found underneath the city of Sinjar after the Peshmerga took over from ISIS. ISIS dug these tunnels so that they could move around the city without being observed, and they ran communications cables, there's network cables, there's overhead cover, everything they need, and not all of these have been cleared yet from mines and other IEDs. So this is where the tunnels come out inside of these homes, which are now, as you can see, absolutely destroyed. This one looks like it might have got hit by a bomb or something. And this has been cleared, but many of these houses are still wired up with IEDs. And so we have to be very careful where we go here, and who knows how long it'll take before the people can come back and try to rebuild their lives. You know, if you ever heard of the city of Stalingrad in World War II, this is what I imagine it looking like. Look at this. Everything just collapsed, destroyed. It's just a wrecked and shattered city. This just goes to show that ISIS only comes to kill and steal and destroy, just like someone else we know.
Sinjar is a land of shattered dreams right now. Everything is destroyed.
Our interpreter, Shaheen Nazdar, is a Yazidi who fought ISIS as his people fled Sinjar in August 2014.
Here in Sinjar, ISIS captured more than 6,000. They killed a lot of people, and right now still there's 3,800 in ISIS captivity. We don't know if they are alive or they are being killed.
You might wonder what happened to the 500,000 people who lived here. Many were able to escape to the safety of Mount Sinjar. Some still live there today. Those less fortunate were captured by ISIS, and it's only now becoming apparent the scale of brutality those poor souls faced. Mass graves like this one are being found all over the area, where perhaps thousands of Yazidi men, women, and children were executed and left to rot.
Right now we are in one mass grave in Sinjar. More than 20 mass graves been found out in Sinjar. Also, the number of mass graves right now in Sinjar is more than the number of the family right now in Sinjar city.
This photo taken from Mount Sinjar at night tells the story. The city of Sinjar is here. This is the new front line established by the Peshmerga in November 2015. One of their objectives was to cut off Highway 47 here, which was being used by ISIS to supply Mosul. These lights beyond are villages still under the control of ISIS, where many of the more than 3,000 Yazidis taken hostage are still being held. Red lights are vehicular traffic moving mostly towards Syria, which gives an indication that the Islamic State is pillaging anything of value from Iraq's second largest city, in advance of the Iraqi government's planned operation to retake Mosul later this year.
ISIS not been stopped because they still moving between Syria and Iraq. All night we saw their trucks Their convoy go and back. No airstrike, nothing. They are free.
In the meantime, the people who once lived here continue to hope that their loved ones held captive will someday be returned.
I think America have good, great army, but they don't using for this evil ISIS. For what is this army?
From Sinjar in northern Iraq, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Up next, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden goes to Israel to shore up relations between the two countries. But Israeli trust of the Obama administration is at an all-time low. An American student was murdered in a terror attack in Israel this week. Much of the brutal attack was captured on camera. We want to warn you, the video may be difficult to watch. Police say a Palestinian attacker sprinted up the road, swinging his knife, stabbing people at random for nearly 20 minutes. He injured at least 12 people and killed American graduate student, 28-year-old Taylor Force. He was a first-year MBA student at Vanderbilt, according to university officials, and was visiting Israel on a school trip. Force was also an Eagle Scout and a graduate at West Point. He served tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. Vice President Joe Biden was in Israel at the time of the attack. He voiced his support for the Jewish state and weighed in on the attack.
Let me say in no uncertain terms, the United States of America condemns these acts.
Vanderbilt is planning a memorial service for Taylor Force next week. The vice president's visit comes at a time of increased Palestinian attacks on Israel. Many Israelis also feel America's nuclear deal with Iran has put them in danger. Joe Biden comes to try to rebuild a crumbling relationship, while Israelis' trust in the Obama administration is at an all-time low. That concern has been reflected in polls. For example, after the U.S. and other world powers negotiated the nuclear deal with Iran, nearly 8 out of 10 Israelis felt it put Israel in danger. And a poll of Israelis last year showed only 9% of Israelis felt President Obama was pro-Israel. 60% thought he was pro-Palestinian. And more than 60% of Israelis described Obama as the worst U.S. president for Israel in the past 30 years.
When Israelis view Obama putting his trust at the UN, considering the UN to be the quarterback of international relations, we cannot but develop doubts about the realism coming out of the White House.
Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, the former Israeli liaison to the U.S. Congress, says the lack of U.S. leadership and the so-called leading from behind is what frightens Israel and America's allies in the region.
Ever since Obama has entered the White House, there has been a devastating erosion of America's posture of deterrence, which is bad for America, but doubly so for America's allies throughout the world, but especially in the wildest neighborhood in the world, which is the Middle East. It resembles a new sheriff in town who announces publicly that he carries no gun in his holster. Allies of America, Israel included, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Kuwait, we all want the American sheriff to bring back the gun to the holster and to assert itself.
Despite the concerns about the Obama administration, Ettinger says while Israelis may not like Obama's policies, the relationship between Israel and the U.S. remains strong.
While at the top, we do not have a positive chemistry between the two leaders, the strategic cooperation between the two countries, commercially and militarily, are at an all-time high. Sometimes in defiance of the president, but again due to the American public and American Congress.
Iran sent a message of its own while Biden was in Israel. The Islamic Republic test-fired 2 ballistic missiles. The missiles carried the handwritten phrase, "Israel must be wiped out," on the sides. Coming up, archaeology sheds light on ancient Jewish culture. Find out what this artifact tells us about the role of women in Israel 2,500 years ago. Coming to you this week from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Back in Jerusalem, archaeologists digging under a former orphanage and military base in Jerusalem uncovered what they called surprising finds. Near a Second Temple period mikveh or Jewish ritual bath, they discovered a wine press and unique Roman bathhouse. Pipes that would have brought hot air into the bathhouse are still intact. Archaeologist Amit Reem said ceramic and glass vessels were also found.
Everything is an evidence that nearly 2,000 years ago, the Roman 10th Legion arrived to Jerusalem, and after the destructions of Jerusalem in 70 AD, probably the soldiers occupied this house, and we find archaeological evidence from this period. This is the magic of Jerusalem. Everything is layers upon layers in one place.
Reem says he hopes the place will become an archaeological park for nearby residents and others to enjoy. It's almost impossible to dig a hole in Israel without making some historic find. The recent discovery of 2 ancient seals in Jerusalem explains a lot about the historic city and the people who live there. Archaeologists found the seals inside a 2,500-year-old building.
Inside this building, as a result of very gentle work that include also sifting of the finds, sifting of the airs in order to find all these tiny artifacts, we discovered, among other stuff, 2 Hebrew seals, one with the name of a man, Sariyahu ben Shvaniyahu, and another one with the name of the woman, Eliana bat Goel. We are standing in the heart of ancient Jerusalem, so-called City of David, the term that the Bible used for this place. The city started here and developed on a very small square here in these places for thousands of years. We have 10 historical periods here, starting from the 9th century BC. It's just some 100 years later than the kingdom of David and Solomon. And we have many more young, I would say, less ancient finds, including Hasmonean, Hellenistic period, Roman, Byzantine, and early Islamic. And each period excavated here revealed the most interesting and most exciting finds.
Jahadovich says it's extremely rare to find the name of a woman on a seal.
It's very exciting to know that in ancient times were strong women in Jerusalem living here, and even we have no idea about who was this lady and why she deserved such a special rights in the society. The women's status in the ancient Near East usually wasn't that high. That's why it's so interesting to find a seal signed by a woman name. I think it's very inspiring because we know that in this society that we know as a man world, yeah, and in ancient Near East, such a long time ago, even then there were women who were capable to run their own independent life.
Jahadovich says uncovering a name brings the past and its people to life.
When you have a name of the person, it's turning from something very abstract to something very individual. So we know that they were here by names. I think it's amazing. And that it's a woman, I think it's really very inspiring.
Just ahead, a friend of Zion, why American singer and pop icon Pat Boone is receiving a high honor for his contribution to the Jewish state. Finally this week, Christian singer Pat Boone was honored recently in Jerusalem for his contribution to Israeli culture. He was honored for writing the lyrics to the title song of the 1960 epic movie Exodus. Pat Boone spoke with us about his strong connection to the Jewish state. Some call the song Israel's second national anthem.
This land is mine. God gave this land to me.
It came out of the Bible. Yeah. And I knew two things. One, that everything in the Bible from beginning to end was written by Jews, about Jews, and for Jews. Not all Christians even realize that, and not all Jews. What we call the Old and the New Testaments all are about Jews and about God's working with his chosen people. And that we Gentiles can get in on it if we accept the God of Israel.
The Friends of Zion Award contains the song written in the shape of a harp, translated into Hebrew. Boone originally wrote the words on Christmas Eve on the back of a Christmas card. That card is now displayed in Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem.
I think this song, Exodus, and the privilege I had writing the words for Ernest Gold's great melody is part of the most significant time in my life, and maybe significant moments. Maybe one of the main reasons I was born.
Boone told CBN News that this honor is one of the highlights of his life.
I can't imagine any other thing in my life other than my marriage and my own salvation that means as much as this.
The Friends of Zion Museum here in Jerusalem honors Christian Zionists who gave their lives to save the Jewish people during the Holocaust and help form the State of Israel. Chairman of the board, Yossi Peled, is a retired IDF general and former government leader. Born in Belgium in 1941, a Christian family hid him to keep him safe.
From the age of 6 months until I became 8 years old, I was raised by a Christian family. And I was used to go I went to church every Sunday and cross myself and cross the bread before eating and pray to Jesus before going to bed.
Peled said he's proud to be part of the Friends of Zion vision.
It's an outstanding vision about the history of this nation. Not only the story, because nothing is new basically in the story, but it's new in the way they presented it.
Until I die, this land is mine.
Well, that's it for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline, coming to you this week from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us throughout the week on Facebook and Twitter. And my thanks to the CBN News Bureau here in Washington, D.C. We'll see you next time in Jerusalem.